You know something, Rudy? You're like school in summertime.
School in summertime?
Yeah, school in summertime. Open your fucking ears and I'll pop your I'll pop a yoba your ass a tuba.
What the hell is going on in this cartoon?
Hey, we got a special review today. I'll stop that. I won't do that for the rest of the video, I promise. This is a very special review, as I just said, because it's the gift review. Once a year, I let you guys pick what you want me to cover, and this is what won. Fat Albert. What once was a classic cartoon seen up there with the likes of He-Man, the Jetsons, and the Flintstones, is now often forgotten, and will very likely never, ever, ever appear on TV ever again. But why is this the case? This was one of those big classic cartoons, right? What made it disappear like, oh, that's why. This was created by Bill Cosby. You can tell by the name of the show, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. Unless it's somebody like, say, Franklin Cosby, then chances are it's the comedian that talked about the giant chicken heart. For all three of you out there who are unaware of what's going on, let me fill you in. Bill Cosby is no longer seen as the family-friendly, clean comedian that he once was. He is now seen as, well, whatever this article calls him. And this one too. Yeah, there's a lot out there. He keeps asserting his innocence, but there's more and more evidence popping up over time that makes people go, yeah, let's take a few 100,000 steps back from this guy. Ever since then, people have been reevaluating his stuff, whether it be his stand-ups, his commercials, or his shows. Are they worth seeing anymore? Are they worth seeking out? I see a lot of people talk about this for, say, The Cosby Show, but I hardly see anybody ask the same questions about Fat Albert. It's probably just me being biased though because I grew up with Fat Albert, but I think these questions need to be answered. And no, I didn't grow up in the 1970s. I'm not that old. I watched this with my dad growing up. Stop typing. So, once and for all, let's determine whether or not Fat Albert is still watchable today. You know, given the circumstances. In order to judge Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, let's take a look at another series whose creator was up to, some stuff. Ren and Stimpy. I'm not talking about Ren and Stimpy adult party cartoon, let's pretend that never existed. But the Ren and Stimpy show, despite the fact that John K has gotten up to some very untoward behavior, people still love Ren and Stimpy, they watch it religiously. You know how I think they can do that? They forget about John K, they detach him from the show. Early on, John K played Ren, but you don't imagine him as John K playing Ren, you imagine him as Ren. So while the fans are not by any means endorsing what John K did, they're able to detach him from the project and look at the project as is. Minus the credits, his presence isn't very intrusive and he doesn't make it a point to paste himself everywhere. The same cannot be said about Bill Cosby and Fat Albert. He's the first and last thing you see in every episode. Unless you're watching one of the episodes with the songs, but still, he's very, very prominent. How prominent is he? Well, he appears in the theme song, he appears in the wraparound segments, he appears in the conclusion, and of course, he appears in the cartoon itself. And I'm not talking about as a voice actor, I mean as an actual character. The character of Bill is the young version of Bill Cosby. Ooh, it's a little hard to ignore him here, isn't it? You can't really ignore the fact that he's Bill Cosby either by pretending he's Bill Smith or Bill Johnson or anything. Not only are his speech patterns and mannerisms the same as Cosby, but they call him Bill Cosby on quite a few occasions. In fact, his brother Russell was there too, based off of Bill's real-life brother, Russell Cosby. Not helping is that Bill gets a lot of screen time, and I mean a lot. I'd say he's in the same league as Rudy when it comes to prominence, being that he gets a lot of focus and a lot of episodes to himself, which means also he learns a lot of lessons. It's a shame that, judging by his actions, they didn't really stick. But here's the thing, Bill is not the show, Fat Albert is the show. Fat Albert didn't do anything wrong as far as we're aware. And even then, the rest of the Junkyard Gang is filled with colorful, lovable characters. And also Bucky. Can you really be considered a character if you don't have a personality? Unlike a lot of celebrity cartoons, especially at the time, the premise of the show wasn't to sit back and talk about how wonderful the celebrity is. No, it's about seemingly real people going on seemingly real misadventures and learning seemingly real lessons. One of the episodes that always got me when I was younger was the episode called Moving. I know, creative title, isn't it? The first half of the episode is a typical Fat Albert misadventure. There's not much of a story minus the Buck Buck Championship, But then out of nowhere, bam, Fat Albert comes up to the gang and says, hey, guess what, my family's moving. And everyone gets all upset because this is one of their best friends ever. They had so many great times together and he's just gonna get up and go away. Probably forever. Of course, in the end, it turns out that they don't move, but the episode was sweet nonetheless. And my personal favorite episode had a pretty juvenile lesson of not being afraid of the hospital. But I gotta say, even as an adult, this is probably the funniest the show ever got. It's not gut-bustingly hilarious like, say, Bowfinger or Airplane, but it's still funny, especially for a 70s cartoon. Bill and Russell go to the doctor and find out that they have to have their tonsils removed. So naturally, they assume they're gonna die from this operation. After many attempts to get out of going to the doctor, like saying they're too sick to go to the doctor, they end up writing their last will and testament and giving their friends a bunch of, let's be fair, useless garbage. And I think these two show what made Fat Albert so special. You don't care about what lesson they're trying to teach, even if it is something like racism or sexism. You're there to watch the characters be the characters. Even the simpler members of the Junkyard Gang have great chemistry with everyone else. They feel like real people, and they feel like real friends above all. Watching them kill time in the junkyard or having idle conversations amongst themselves, it's all so endearing. These boys feel like real friends, even when they're mad at Rudy for doing something selfish or mad at Russell for being young, they still feel like they're this big community and they're always gonna be there for each other. That's what made Fat Albert so good. The interactions felt legitimate, and that's what sold the show. Now notice, when I mentioned all of that, with the exception of the character Bill, I didn't mention Bill Cosby once. That's because his appearances in the show are more quantity over quality. Basically, the wraparounds amount to a kid-friendly version of his stand-up. I mean, it's not like his stand-up was bad for kids or anything, but you know what I mean, it's for younger kids. The character of Bill basically disappears from being Bill Cosby and becomes another member of the gang, even if they do constantly call him Bill Cosby and they make him as Bill Cosby-ish as possible. That's why, in my eyes, Fat Albert can still be watched today. No, I'm not gonna push for it to be aired on TV or anything, it's way too soon for that, and in fact, if it never does appear on TV again, I'd totally understand. But I'm gonna take the stance of the Ren and Stimpy fans on this one. I have too much of a connection for Fat Albert, and I like its character interactions far too much to give up on it. I still happily own the first season. I don't watch it a ton, given the fact I work a lot, and even then I have to watch things for this channel. I still like and appreciate the show. Just not the guy behind it. I do not support what he did in the slightest. Nor the fact that he constantly tries to say that he was innocent or still thinks that he's a functional member of society. Yeah, remember SNL's last Christmas episode? You know, the first time SNL's been funny in the last, 7 years? Eddie Murphy came back on the show and did a monologue where he made fun of Bill Cosby for some of it. Not too much, just a little bit. And then Bill Cosby got really mad on Twitter. Luckily, everyone put him in his place. This is the first time I'm ever rooting for the Twitter mob. But we're not done yet, oh no. We may have covered the Fat Albert show, but there's still one more very prominent Fat Albert thing we need to review today, and I think we all know what that is. That's right, the Danganronpa Fat Albert themed spin-off game, Hey, here comes the hope! Yeah, I know, I promised I wouldn't do that voice again, but I broke my promise. I can already hear the police sirens right outside my door. Don't worry guys, I'm coming. In actuality, we're going to be covering the 2004... Fat Albert, starring Kenan Thompson, known for his role as Kenan on Kenan and Kel. I know, what a shock. And Kayla Pratt, the voice of Penny Proud in the Proud Family. This movie got panned upon its initial release, but people since have found a soft spot for it. Until all this happened and now people want to bury its existence. I have very mixed feelings on this movie. I even did when I was younger. When I was a young Fat Albert fan and watched this, I basically went through the Phantom Menace mindset of being, no, it can't be bad, it has to be good, right? I mean, there's no way that this could be bad, there's no way, it's impossible. You know me, I'm an adaptation judge, right? I like to judge adaptations as to whether or not they're worth your time. Keep in mind, this was made by the creator of the show, written by him, and supervised by him. Ignore the fact that it's Bill Cosby. Remember, the creator was at the helm. So, with that being said, how come Dumb Donald is illiterate now? How come Weird Harold is suddenly clumsy? How come no one can understand Mushmouth even though they could in the show? How come everyone's outfits changed? How come Bucky suddenly has a personality but it's also a really weak, kind of creepy personality? How come Rudy went from the uppity rich guy to a kind average Joe? How come the group dynamics and interactions were removed in crowd scenes and everyone basically acts like a hive mind going ooh and ah regardless of their personality? Remember guys, the person who made the show wrote this. And that's not even including a bunch of other plot issues too, like when the characters leave the TV, is it just the reruns that are missing the characters or is it the home video releases too? How come the characters are so popular that them being released on DVD is this big deal, but no one seems to recognize them when they're in the real world? Aren't people gonna question why they look, sound, and act exactly like the characters on the TV show that just disappeared? How come no one else seems to recognize Fat Albert but a bunch of young children do? Even the older people that watch the show don't recognize them. When Bucky, Weird Harold, and Dumb Donald get back to the junkyard, shouldn't they be able to scare the bullies away, or do they really need Fat Albert to do all this? Things like that. Even though this movie is a bit clunky, I have a bit of a soft spot for it still. Maybe it's the genuine interaction between Fat Albert and Doris and Lori, or maybe it's the overall nostalgia factor, but this movie is still innocent enough. Except for the fact that Bill Cosby plays a major role. Dang it, we were so close! The humor's pretty hit and miss, and it's basically a non-magical version of Enchanted. Nothing all too special. But that doesn't mean it's bad. Granted, it doesn't mean it's good either, but you get what I'm trying to say. This is the epitome of a guilty pleasure movie for me. Although, unlike the show, there's no real substantive merit to save this one. It's purely a personal thing. If you want to give it another shot despite all the stuff going on, go right ahead. You might enjoy it. Then again, you might not. But if you don't want to run that risk and you want to stay away from it entirely, I don't blame you. You know, looking back on this all, it's really sad that this had to happen. Fat Albert really was doing so well, there were even talks about a reboot coming out in 2013 or 2014. But you know, when this news broke, Fat Albert was suddenly seen as poison, so no one wanted to touch it in the slightest. Even the Word Network, this rinky-dink station that I used to watch it on, has since abandoned it entirely. It's a real shame seeing this happen to a show that I used to love as a kid. But then again, it is for good reason. Even so, I personally would like to say that Fat Albert still holds up. Sure, the animation isn't very great and there's, this guy in it, but the writing can be witty at times and the characters are so lovable that I can't give up on it. I would say, hey, maybe we could try re-airing it but editing out the Bill Cosby stuff, but again, you kinda can't. He's unfortunately everywhere. And if you can't look past Bill Cosby in this, I totally understand. I, however, am able to do so. That might be nostalgia bias talking, but I'm still willing to give the show a chance. Separating the creator from the creation, of course, even if he didn't really want to do that himself. So if you're willing, check Fat Albert out again sometime. Maybe you'll find that it could be worth watching. And maybe you won't. I don't know you. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed your gift review. What do you think of Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, both the movie and the show? Were you able to ignore the Bill Cosby stuff? Comment below and let me know because I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time. Right now, I gotta go play Danganronpa. Hey, here comes the hope. I always get stuck on the 4th trial. I always forget who killed Weird Harold. Ugh, so hard.